Hello friend, this is Nikolai. Do not be alarmed. I am currently hiding in Nigeria. Perhaps you've gotten my emails. I've seen some crazy shit in Russia, but nothing as bad as this remaster. Please help me spread the word by liking this video and subscribing to Aureko Gaming.
Hey! What's good, everyone? Today we'll take a look at one of the free PS Plus games for August, Modern Warfare 2 Remastered. The original Modern Warfare 2 was one of my favorite games of all time, so I was looking forward to seeing how much has changed and been improved on in the remaster. As this is a remaster, I'll be grading it differently from a brand new release. Alright, let's get into it. The graphics are the only good thing about this remaster. Initially it felt like there was barely any difference from the original, but the fact that 11 years later, in my mind, the graphics were similar to those in 2009 is just a testament to how far ahead of its time Modern Warfare 2 was. After going back and playing the original on my PS3, I realized that actually the difference is night and day. The remaster looks significantly better in almost all aspects. I say almost because there is one area where the remaster fails graphically, but more on that later. Despite having played both versions in 1080p, the remastered textures are much more detailed and about on par for current gen games such as Horizon Zero Dawn maybe. In this regard, it's not far off from the Modern Warfare reboot from last November, deserving a 10 out of 10 for the textures. The same goes for the lighting. In my most recent game review for Paper Mario the Origami King, which you can check out right here, I was blown away by the lighting of the game, which perfectly complemented the overall visuals despite not being as graphically detailed as something on PlayStation 4. The Modern Warfare 2 remaster gave me the same impression. The lighting perfectly complements the visuals, and if the lighting wasn't so spot on, they would feel dated despite all the other improvements. The levels where you're fighting through a war-torn Washington DC especially bring this out. The only minor issue that I have with this is that the lighting is actually so good that in some cases it makes it obvious which textures were given attention and which weren't. You'll be coming out of the water onto the oil rig, and as you're surfacing you almost think you're watching a movie. Then you look up at the floorboards on the oil rig and instantly remember that this game is actually 11 years old. That small blemish isn't enough to impact the lighting overall though, and it's still deserving of a perfect 10 out of 10. The particle effects also have changed significantly. Despite still completely obscuring the view when you're in a snowstorm or passing through a dust cloud or explosion, the actual particle effects make all of those things look much more realistic. A moment like this, where you're ice climbing or walking through a desert about to be hit by a sandstorm, also makes you feel like you're taking part in an interactive movie. Not much more to say on this, also a 10 out of 10. The redesigns are where the remaster falls short. You can walk through a forest and everything looks amazing, until you pass a tree and it looks like it was made from leftovers from a paper shredder. You guys should look up Vichinanki, because that's what all of the plants in this game seem to be made of. The grass looks untouched from the original, and considering how many times you'll find yourself prone, it makes a big difference. The fact that none of this was redesigned is unacceptable given how much detail went into the rest of the visual overhaul. 0 out of 10. Now let's take a look at the additions and fixes, which were extremely disappointing. Usually I wouldn't expect much of anything new in a remaster aside from a graphical improvement and maybe some minor tweaks, but this one not only doesn't add anything in terms of gameplay, it actually takes things out. There is no new content, and on top of that, Spec Ops and multiplayer aren't even part of the package. Even minor things that were standard for games a decade ago have been inexplicably taken out of the remaster. In the original, you're able to change the game volume and the voice volume separately. Here, you can't even do that. You're stuck playing this game on unbearably loud settings because you can barely hear what is being said over the explosions and gunfire. But without further turning up those sounds, you're unable to turn up just the voices. It makes absolutely no sense, and you can't even say that the team behind the remaster was too lazy to add it, because they had to actually take the time to take it out. That's not even getting into the fact that there's nothing new. No new collectibles, no new cheats or anything. 0 out of 10. The controls should also be modernized for the new system. They did remap the aim, shoot, and throw frag tactical buttons for the PS4, which I'm used to now, having played PS4 for so many years, but oddly they still feel like awkward choices for this game. Obviously you can remap the buttons and change layouts, but the default setting doesn't feel natural. There's also nothing else that was added or tweaked aside from the controls overall feeling a tiny bit tighter than in the original, so you can see that they kind of tried to mess around with this and then just gave up on it altogether. Feels very half-assed, but the tighter controls are nice, so I say this deserves a 5 out of 10. There were absolutely no improvements made when it comes to everything else in the game, and it really hurts the overall experience. You're going to see me attempt a favela level and die probably 30 times in a row before finally managing to get past it. I like that the veteran difficulty is still pretty brutal, and part of my issues were definitely caused by my lack of practice when it comes to shooters in recent years, but the AI takes some ridiculous actions and it further shows the age of this game. The AI isn't updated whatsoever, and it was barely passable in 2009, let alone in 2020. Enemies have X-ray vision and 100% accuracy no matter where they are firing from, and they can kill you with 2 bullets even if they hit you in the pinky toe. But on the flip side, if you throw a flashbang, enemies make absolutely no effort to even make it seem like they're aware there is a flashbang about to go off 2 inches in front of their face. No effort to get out of the way or to hide. I'm not expecting a full rework of the AI to make this one of the most difficult games ever created, but at least a slight improvement would have been nice, so that the game didn't make you feel stupid that even on the highest difficulty you can run past every level as long as you can crouch behind a box and throw timely smoke and flash grenades. Another aspect of combat that should have been improved was the camera when you take damage. As is, it remains exactly the same as in the original story mode, where you take 1 bullet to the foot and somehow you're looking into the sky, unable to shoot your target because you just had to do a spontaneous 360 flip in the middle of a gunfight. The improvements deserve a 0 out of 10. Finally, we need to look at the circumstances surrounding the remaster. The timing is absolutely horrible, and were it any other year, I would have felt differently about this. They only even did this because they knew people who were younger and had the time to play the original in 2009 might be out of a job due to the pandemic and would love to revisit one of their favorite games. It's pathetic. Let's also start with the fact that Activision came out saying they have no plans to remaster the Spec Ops mode or the multiplayer mode because they are trying to consolidate the Call of Duty experience under Modern Warfare and Warzone. What a bunch of little bitches. Call of Duty fanbase has been asking for a Modern Warfare 2 remaster for years, and Activision knew it, so they decided to finally cave in, but only partially and at the worst possible time. For what? Is rubbing it in the faces of the people who buy their garbage products the only way these guys can get it up? The original Modern Warfare was already remastered years ago as well, so clearly they could have come out with the Modern Warfare 2 remaster sooner and done the whole thing and not just a campaign. If all that wasn't bad enough, you now have a total of 6 games with basically the same title, but now 2 are remasters and 1 is a reboot featuring a character from the remaster that came out half a year after the reboot, and the character was also in the original. Like, that's not difficult for people to follow, but having a Modern Warfare 2 remastered multiplayer would split the fanbase up too much? Yeah, alright you greedy fucks. Take this 0 out of 10 and take this L. The cost is ridiculous as well. Granted, we're doing this review for August 2020 when it's free for PlayStation Plus members. If this was just a regular day, I would never drop $20 on this game. The price tag assumes that the campaign is 1/3 of the game, which clearly it's not. First of all, I don't know a single person who bought the original Modern Warfare 2 for the story and not the multiplayer. But even if that were true, there is no way you're putting in 1/3 of the total time you spend with this game into the campaign alone. The campaign is still beatable in 4 to 5 hours. I remember Spec Ops taking longer than that, and I put in days on playtime into the multiplayer. So if we're to pay for the proportion of the campaign to the length of the total game, we should be paying a few cents for it. Even with the graphics being updated, it doesn't change the fact that this is an incomplete experience where nothing was fixed except for 90% of the graphics and things were actually taken out. But since this was supposed to be strictly about the cost, I'll give it an 8 out of 10. Finally, I wanted to discuss the value of the product, but it's pretty obvious how I feel about that. The regular price, coupled with the minimal effort put into improving the game, as well as the timing of this coming out during the pandemic, makes it all feel like a classic, unapologetic Activision money grab. Furthermore, because of the issues that were not addressed from the original, like the camera getting a seizure anytime you take damage, it's hard for me to even feel this remaster has any nostalgic value, because it only reminds me of the bad parts of the game. Also a 0 out of 10. It's really difficult to be optimistic about a product that no one asked for, especially since Activision had the audacity to pretend and hear fans of the game only to take their pleas in the most literal way possible and throw this garbage in their faces and actually beg for money for it. The game itself is still amazing, but the effort that went into the remaster is non-existent except for the graphical improvements. That still counts for something, but it's barely enough to make Modern Warfare 2 Remastered worth it, even if it's free. And with everything that was taken out, they should have named this Modern Warfare 2 Demastered. 4.3 out of 10.